Now on KOIM News at 5, we'll hear from Freeman health officials about a rise in COVID cases among kids.
Multiple law enforcement agencies say they're prepared ahead of a rally for those who support January 6th insurrectionists. I'm Skyler Henry on Capitol Hill with a look at the security preparations and the threats officials deem credible.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Junction police and state authorities are investigating the overnight detonation of a pipe bomb. This is KOIM News at 5. Happened around 2 this morning in the yard of a home on the 1100 block of York. That's near Center Creek Park in Carl Junction. Police say someone on a dirt bike style motorcycle stopped in front of the home and threw the pipe bomb into the yard where it detonated. Police say no one was hurt. They've contacted the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to help in the investigation. Freeman Health System pediatricians say they're seeing more kids with COVID. The doctors say the increase stems from the Delta variant being more contagious among kids. When it comes to severity, well, it depends on the child. Officials say you should get your child tested if they show any symptom of COVID.
Now, as opposed to when this pandemic started, we are seeing more kids get sick with that. And I think nationally we see Delta being more affecting children more than the Alpha variant did.
Pediatricians at Freeman do not administer COVID vaccines, but they can refer patients to someone who can. A new review of existing data suggests it's rare for children to experience long COVID symptoms beyond 3 months. Australian researchers analyzed more than a dozen studies involving nearly 20,000 children and adolescents with persistent symptoms. The most common lingering symptoms 4 to 12 weeks after COVID infection were headache, fatigue, sleep disturbance, difficulty concentrating, and abdominal pain. Nick Kelly joins us now with the first look at the weather.
Had a pretty good day overall. Dow, not bad to start this weekend out. Mostly sunny skies out top, but earlier in the day, we were just bouncing back and forth between partly and mostly sunny skies, but no rain around here, thankfully. Can't help but notice a few thunderstorms trying to develop north of Wichita, especially around Hutch, and a little more broken before you head back near Salina. We widen the picture out. We actually have a frontal boundary stalled across northern parts of Kansas and northern parts of Missouri. This is where I really think the bulk of the rain chances this evening will stay. I think we'll be still in good shape, not just for football games tonight, but for any outdoor plans this evening. It is a bit on the warm side, though, mid to upper 80s for much of the region, and we will see temperatures go from the mid 80s at 6 o'clock, falling through the 70s, and I think eventually Dow will drop back into the mid 60s. Quite an interesting forecast ahead of us, including a first taste of fall on the way, all coming up here in a bit.
We'll see you soon. The Pentagon is now admitting that a drone strike killed 10 civilians in Afghanistan last month. Not an Islamic State extremist, as first reported. The strike was in response to an attack that killed 13 U.S. service members and dozens of Afghan civilians. Marine General Frank McKenzie, head of U.S. Central Command, called it a tragic mistake. For days after the strike, Pentagon officials stated that it had been conducted correctly. Thousands of Haitian migrants are camped under the Del Rio International Bridge at the Texas border in numbers that have multiplied in just the past few days. Over the past 11 months, nearly 30,000 Haitian citizens have arrived at the southern border. A devastating earthquake rocked long-suffering Haiti in August, and the country's president was assassinated in July. The temporary fencing is back in the nation's capital as law enforcement braces for Saturday's rally in support of the January 6 rioters. Members of the National Guard are on standby as the Department of Homeland Security warns of online threats of violence. Reporter Skyler Henry is on Capitol Hill with more.
Washington, D.C. is on high alert 1 day before supporters hold a much-anticipated rally for those arrested in connection with the January 6th storming of the Capitol. CBS News has obtained a Department of Homeland Security bulletin warning it is aware of a small number of recent online threats of violence connected to the rally and found online discussions encouraging violence the day before. According to the bulletin, social media users discussed storming the Capitol the night before the rally, and other references to violence included using the rally to target Jewish institutions, elected officials, and liberal churches.
We're not going to tolerate violence, and we will not tolerate criminal behavior of any kind.
U.S. Capitol Police say they're most concerned about the potential of clashes between protesters and counter-protesters.
in my opinion, that's the most likely scenario for violence.
Fences will be up here at the Capitol and Supreme Court until Sunday. Security cameras are already in place and all available staff will be working. We should also mention that law enforcement officers from around Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia will be on site to assist.
We have extremely strong partnerships with all of our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners, and we are appreciative for their assistance and their collaboration going into this weekend.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has approved a request for 100 members of the Washington, D.C. National Guard to be on standby if needed. Officials say they will not be armed. Rally organizers insist Saturday's event will be peaceful, with only 700 protesters expected to attend. Skyler Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
U.S. Capitol Police say elected officials are not expected to participate in tomorrow's rally. Also, President Biden won't be in town. He's spending the weekend at his home in Delaware. Still ahead, a chance to buy some whiskey you won't find at a bar.
It goes down smooth and it's up for auction. I'm Ian Lee with the world's oldest aged whiskey.
And next in Health Watch, health experts warn against delaying cancer screenings during the pandemic. Topping today's Health Watch, an FDA advisory panel soundly rejected a plan to offer Pfizer booster shots against COVID-19 to most Americans. The panel did back boosters for people who are 65 or older or run a high risk of severe disease. Members of the panel of outside experts voiced frustration that Pfizer had provided little data on the safety of extra doses. Cholesterol-lowering drugs may help patients with a type of inflammatory bowel disease. Stanford medicine researchers found statins seem to be effective for the treatment of ulcerative colitis. About 1 million people suffer from that disease. Patients around the country have put off doctor's appointments and routine cancer screenings during the pandemic. Experts are sounding the alarm that getting checked can be life-saving. Carolyn Vandergriff has more from Dallas.
When COVID-19 shut down the country, some medical care was also put on pause.
Screenings in the month of April and 2020 were down by 87% for breast cancer, 89% for pap smears for cervical cancer detection.
Routine cancer screenings have since picked back up, but still haven't reached pre-pandemic levels.
I've got a lot of patients who are really, 2 years past when they were due, just based on the timing of things. And that really concerns physicians.
A new survey from the Prevent Cancer Foundation shows 90% of women are visiting friends and going out to eat during the pandemic, but only 48% are visiting their doctor's offices.
Early detection is so key. Are you worried there are going to be cases that were missed through all of this?
We know that there are many, many patients out there right now with undiagnosed breast cancers, cervical cancers, and also colon, prostate, lung, other types of cancers.
I had a routine mammogram, and like so many, I had delayed getting it during the pandemic.
Senator Amy Klobuchar announced last week she battled breast cancer earlier this year.
I came through it, but in the course of it, I found out that thousands of women have undetected breast cancer right now, and 1 in 3 Americans are not moving forward with just routine exams and physicals during the pandemic.
Doctors are encouraging people to get their routine medical care back on track.
I want to reassure people that it is absolutely safe to go into medical facilities.
Because the earlier many conditions are picked up, the better. Caroline Vandergriff, CBS News, Dallas, Texas.
During the first months of the pandemic, hospitals in the U.S. reported a decline in patients being treated for heart attack and stroke. Doctors say that was due in part to the increased strain on health systems and patients' fear of contracting COVID. New research shows some key risk factors for early chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, in the Hispanic and Latino population. The Brigham and Women's study identified asthma as one of the most important risk factors, followed by smoking and chronic sinusitis. 1/3 of mothers delayed plans to have more children due to the pandemic. Researchers at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine surveyed more than 1,000 mothers in New York, and they found many who had been thinking about getting pregnant changed their minds during the first few months of the pandemic. Parents with higher stress levels and more economic uncertainty were more likely to rethink having more kids. And that is a look at today's health news. A little bit later, an area school plans to use a donation to upgrade its playground.
But first, we're staying quite warm for this weekend, but wait till you see how the middle of next week is looking. Forecast up next. We were certainly quite warm for today, but at least you kept the humidity pretty much in check, and skies looking pretty good all across the area. Looking back over the past 36 hours, we definitely had a bit of a hot day yesterday. Most of us around 90 degrees, but after we dropped back, thankfully, into the middle to upper 60s this morning. So far, the highest number I have from Joplin Regional, 89 degrees. So maybe just a hair cooler today compared to yesterday. But look at what's coming on down the road. While we do stay fairly warm for this weekend, we'll keep things pretty dry for this weekend. Then our next front will not only bring rain and thunderstorm chances for Monday going into Tuesday, but behind it, plenty of fall-like air waiting behind the front, and certainly appropriate as we kick off the fall season officially by next Wednesday. In the meantime, 7th and range line. Skies look pretty good. Partly to mostly sunny, but 89 degrees is where we sit in Joplin. It feels like 90 just due to dew points sitting around 64 degrees. But again, this is hardly sultry air outside, so at least we're keeping things in check as we get this evening underway. You can see how Iola, Fort Scott, and Nevada are all sitting at 86, and from Stockton Lake down to Table Rock, you're mainly in the mid-80s, but the rest of us upper 80s to near 90 degrees. It feels like 90, maybe some lower 90s as well because of the slight bump in the humidity that we had in place for today. But as far as the rest of the evening, let's keep things pretty quiet and warm until we get to the mid-70s by 10 o'clock. 71 by midnight, and we'll drop back into the mid-60s later on tonight. I don't have a lot happening here, but can't help but notice some scattered thunderstorms, a broken batch of it developing off to our north across northern Missouri and northern Kansas. That's where a frontal boundaries park just to the north, and that's where I really think the bulk of the rain chances are going to stay. I'll still keep an eye on the radar, but I really don't see any of those rain chances headed our way this evening, thankfully. But we are trying to see this upper level ridge build back in while there's a cutoff low sitting over northeastern Texas. That's going to keep any rain chances for this weekend off to our south and east. So you can see how we're going to stay pretty quiet. With that said, here's 7 o'clock, kickoff for all the football games, mainly lower to middle 80s, so not looking too bad there. And we'll keep things quiet for all the games tonight with us dropping back into the mid to upper 70s by the final snap. The rest of the night, we'll see temperatures dropping back into the mid 60s, and we'll just keep skies mostly clear and a light easterly breeze overall as we go throughout the course of the night. We'll start your Saturday morning out with lows around 65 degrees. Then we're looking okay again for the rest of the day. 84 degrees by noon. That's that front up north tries to sweep on through, but it really falls apart, and you can see how it doesn't give us much of a cool down. We'll just say 88 for downtown Joplin. Most of us mid to upper 80s for tomorrow, so warm, but thankfully again not too terribly humid. We keep dry with highs in the upper 80s again for Sunday. I think any rain chances again staying just to our south and east, but look at this vigorous upper level low. This starts working in with our next front by late Monday and Tuesday. You can see how it'll give us a shot for rain and storms, but look how it forces the jet well to the south of the region as we go into next week. Let me show you how the numbers look with that setup. 88 for Saturday and Sunday for highs. We're dry for this weekend, thankfully. 91 on Monday as that front rolls in, but behind it, we'll have highs around 73 Tuesday, 53 for Wednesday morning, highs for the first day of fall right around 75, and we're looking at upper 70s to lower 80s going into next weekend down.
Yeah, some chilly overnights in the coming week. Looking forward to that.
Finally knocking on the door, and we'll take it.
You bet. Thanks, Nick. The Carl Junction K-1 Primary School is using a new donation to make its new playground more inclusive. The Arvest Foundation today donated nearly $11,000 to the Carl Junction Educational Foundation. The money will help fund a ground-level, multi-person inclusive merry-go-round, which will allow kids with disabilities to get in on the fun.
Because I have students that before were sitting on the sidelines just watching their friends every day and not being able to play. It broke my heart. Being an occupational therapist, I work with those children, and it takes away your motivation for other things when you're not able to play with your friends at recess.
Officials expect the new playground to be finished by the end of October. Coming up, how much has been spent on COVID relief funds? First, though, we honor a local Korean War veteran. Joplin native Edward Kester served in the U.S. Army in 1952 and 53. He received a Purple Heart and the Bronze Star. Lieutenant Edward Kester, a four-state hero.
Pittsburgh.
Topping today's Consumer Watch, the Treasury Department is out with a tally of how much has been spent in COVID relief funds since the American Rescue Program was signed into law. The government says it shelled out about $700 billion of the $1 trillion set aside for relief. $450 billion of those funds were distributed directly to families and households via stimulus payments and child tax credits. People on Social Security could get a big bump next year. The Senior Citizen League says recipients will likely get a 6% increase in their checks. That would be the largest increase in 40 years. It would add about $93 per month in payments. The reason? A spike in inflation. The Social Security Administration is expected to announce the cost of living adjustment for 2022 next month. Whiskey isn't just for drinking anymore. The expensive stuff is becoming a collector's item, and a special bottle of scotch is going under the hammer next month. Auctioneers predict it could fetch hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ian Lee has that story from London.
This bottle of scotch was 80 years in the making.
So 80 years of oak maturation makes this the oldest age statement of any whiskey.
This single malt's journey to the auction block started during World War II. Whiskey maker Gordon and MacPhail barreled the Glenlivet Scotch when much of Europe was on a war footing.
Distilleries were turned into arms manufacturers or clothing manufacturers. Everything was used for the war effort. So to have any whiskey distilled in 1940, let alone that still exists today and that you can drink, is extremely rare.
Auction house Sotheby's says what they created is more expensive than liquid gold.
What kind of price are we putting on this bottle?
It's about 100,000 to 200,000 US dollars.
So the moment of truth, how does it taste?
Wow.
There's a sort of rhubarb and custard, apple crumble custard, apple pie kind of flavor in there.
Despite shooting a shockwave of flavor across the taste buds, old-aged whiskey isn't always for drinking.
Whiskey's becoming popular as an investment. It's also popular just to collect and have as a sort of trophy piece, as if you're buying art. And then plenty of people will be drinking these.
To drink or not to drink? That will be the question when the world's oldest whiskey is sold next month. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
Now, if you miss out on the October 7th auction, you are in luck. 249 other bottles will be sold at exclusive stores for a pretty good penny. The mood of consumers bounced slightly higher this month. According to the University of Michigan's preliminary index of consumers, sentiment edged up to a reading of 71. Last month, sentiment fell to the lowest level in nearly a decade amid worries about income growth and a higher cost of living. They say happiness is a state of mind, but some states are happier than others. According to a recent Wallet Hub study, Utah is the happiest state in America. Minnesota came in second. Hawaii rounded out the top three. The personal finance site weighed a number of factors, including depression rates, amount of work hours, and adequate sleep. A final check of the forecast next. The CBS Evening News is next. Then on KOAM News at 6, we're going to look at how big restaurant chains are growing in the area using what's called ghost kitchens. Plus, Freeman Health System unveils a new breast milk donor program. And it's Friday night, which means high school football. We're going to have previews of some of the area's biggest games. Hope you'll stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. Kind of warm out there, but otherwise not a bad night to get out and watch some football.
Yeah, speaking of previews, I can give everyone a quick preview of how this evening will undergo once again. We're keeping dry for this evening. Temperatures should be in the mid to upper 80s by 7 o'clock, so snap off weather should be pretty good. I see us staying quiet up until the final snap, where temperatures will drop back into the mid 70s. Then we're just quiet for the rest of the night. You can see how overnight lows will drop off to about 65 degrees across the region. We'll go upper 80s for Saturday and Sunday. Both days dry, but once we get behind Monday and Tuesday's front, Dow, plenty of fall-like air waiting for us.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us. CBS Evening News is next. Of course, we'll be right back here at 6. We'll see you then. Let's make it a great evening.